Happy New Year 2025. So we're now in the new year, and we hope you guys all had a wonderful holiday period and were able to rest and relax and catch up with family and friends. I think for me personally, it was a pretty relaxing-ish holiday. I slept a lot. That was what my body needed. And how was it for you, Victoria? I mean, I already know, but you can share it
Yeah.
with our audience.
Oh, it was fun. It was different, a different kind of Christmas. The stepkids were all away with their mom on a cruise. So yeah, they were gone for all of Christmas and New Year's. And so it just had my son here. And then we had Michelle's two boys, who are 21 and 19. They came from Canada to visit us and stay for Christmas and New Year. So that was like so fun. We haven't, me and my son haven't seen them since 2000, what,
2016?
2006, 2016, I think. 2006.
2016.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it
So,
Yeah, when they left, so we were all living in Guangzhou, China at the time, and then they left China around, yeah, in 2016. I remember we even had a goodbye party, a get together
goodbye
and a
party, I
goodbye
remember,
party.
yes.
It was so nice what you did. We took away a jar, and in the jar was like little memories of the different things that people had said, like they're going to miss about them and that they're going to, looking forward to them in their new life. So yeah, 2016 until 2024, a long time.
Anyway, yeah. So last time we saw them, they were like little boys, and Harry was 3 or 4 or something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, he doesn't really remember them. And so I guess they're all over here and they're all young men now. And, Harry's 12, but, turning 13 soon and as tall as me. And so they're all doing like the big boy stuff. But I guess I'm used to, oh, making sure that they had, do you have enough to eat and all this stuff? And they were just kind of doing their own thing like young men do. And it was a little bit different for me because I guess, I'm used to being like, oh, especially around Christmas time, oh, it's family holiday and I have to make sure that everyone's all cozy and fed and everything. And they were just kind of doing their young men thing. So I was kind of like, huh, I'm kind of like, I don't know what should we be doing? But we still did a lot of fun stuff. We took them
Yeah.
out and you know, uh, your oldest boy, Ryan, rented a car. And so we went like driving and took Harry and Broderick out. So yeah, it was real. I think it was like good holiday for them. They got to
Mm.
experience Colorado and we went up to the mountains and did some horse riding and yeah, just did kind of like young guy stuff, which was good. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
They told
yeah.
me they had a blast, made so many good memories. And then, yeah, we're able to reconnect with Harry because it had been such a long time since they saw each other and they were they were like little boys the last time they saw each other, and now they're young men. Um, yeah, so it was really good. I'm so happy that you were able to spend that time together. Um, Yeah, and let's see. So yeah, Christmas. I spent I on Christmas Eve, I took my driving exam, and thankfully I passed.
Yes.
It was amazing. It was incredible.
Oh.
Thank you. Yeah, such a huge accomplishment because I'm 41, and it's the first time I'm driving. I mean, actually driving after passing the exam. So I took two exams before in Taiwan and China when I was much younger, but never had a vehicle afterwards, so never got on the roads. So, starting this journey again at 40, 41, and then finally passing after so many delays and hurdles, it felt so good. And being able to, I've been envisioning this moment for about a year now, since the time I got a car at this time last year, then started driving lessons. I had to build up quite a bit of confidence to get into the place where I actually felt I could get in the car and just start driving. And then delays with the driving instructors, and then also having my Achilles tendon torn, and then delay after delay after delay. And then even the first exam was canceled. So getting into the seat and passing, and then, going through the whole thing, it felt like, such a win, such a huge win. And now when I'm, cold January mornings with frost and ice, and you just don't want to walk, I'm driving in my nice warm car, driving my daughter to the childminders. I'm like, I've been envisioning this moment for a year and now I'm actually doing it. So I'm like, I'm really, really savoring every moment. It feels so good. And then not just letting it pass as well, because I think there's so much we can gain from really taking a moment to savor good things that happen in our lives. I think so we're in such of a hurry so much of the time, and the world is moving at such a fast pace. Good things happen, and we're just like, yeah, on to the next. If we actually stop and savor and be like, yeah, look at what this means, look at how far I've come, and then to be in that moment. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today in this episode. So, this episode, the topic is da, 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 I've got my notes here. It is healing from trauma and therapy. So, the role that therapy plays in that. Yeah, this is a topic that's really close to mine and Victoria's heart. And we'd like to use this time to, first of all, share our own journey, kind of like what that has been, specifically through the lens of how therapy and counseling has helped us along on that journey. And then also kind of looking forward to, well, what does that mean for us now? And what are we doing with this healing that we have? Any thoughts on that, Vix?
Just yeah, I'm excited, and kind of what you said, like, I didn't know 5 years ago that this was going to be my thing, that I was going to be all into. I knew that I was into personal growth and things like that, and but I always felt it was about like learning new things. So kind of like driving, or I still have to do that. I'm still in that stage where I'm still building up the confidence. I also can't drive, so you went first for that one, and I'm going to be the next one. And for I guess for some people they're like, what are you talking about? You're 41 years old and you don't know how to drive. For us, it's a super huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's something to do with our upbringing, our background. We were kind of talking about that, like, why do we have so much trauma around just being able
Yeah.
to drive ourselves, where your average American 16-year-old's like, yeah, sure, hop into the car and drive, and it's nothing for them. Um, and so it is, it's not the action necessarily. It's like what the stories we tell ourselves around it. And so I think that, that it's, for us being able to drive is as huge a win as for somebody being able to get up on stage and speak for the first time or something like that. It's a huge milestone for
Yeah.
us. Um, and so, yeah, it's just interesting to see, like you said, kind of looking back on where we were, 5, 10 years ago, and kind of where we are now, and all the change that's taken place in our lives, but also what that allows us to do now, what opportunities that opens up. And I think mom always says, like I think it's a Bible verse or something, a man's gifts make room for him or something like that.
Mm.
And so I think that's something that we both really personally value, learning and growing and pushing ourselves constantly out of our comfort zone. But in doing so, it opens up new opportunities that weren't a possibility 5, 10 years ago. So yeah, I mean, did you ever think, like, when we were in Guangzhou, just doing our thing, you running your English studio and me, a teacher, that, hey, we're going to be working together and doing a trauma care program for cult survivors? So, what?
No.
Huh?
We weren't
It's
even on very good
talking.
terms ourselves. I was
No,
just
we weren't.
reflecting on that this morning, like how much our relationship has grown. And even just that talk could be like a whole few podcasts. But yeah, we're getting teary-eyed thinking about
Yeah,
it.
me too.
But no, I had no, you could never imagine it. Never. But from that time until now, it's like it's been a long road, but a really meaningful, beautiful one. And yes, now that we're this point that we're at, it's like, you feel like a what is it, horse chomping at the bit, like raring to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Then
All
also,
right.
like,
Yeah.
where, if we've come this far in 5 years, or 10 years, huge, but like at least last 5 years, where are we going to be in another 5 years? And that's something I think I learned from one of my mentors, that success compounds on itself. It's like we don't, we just kind of think like, oh, okay, it took me this long to get this results, but we don't realize that, it's like a boulder rolling, right? It kind of it picks up momentum and speed. So we're going to be even further, as long as we keep doing the same thing, we keep putting our values and our visions and stuff, and like really making them the like the thing that guides us. Yeah, I'm just like, I'm so excited about the future. And I'm like, 2025, yes, you know.
Big year
So
for us. Yes, it will be. It feels like that for sure. All right. So I've got here, yeah, some questions or topics that we can cover. So the first one is, could we each share a particular story or the moment of, could be moments of, but we're looking for a particular moment of when we realized that we had trauma. Um, what was that like? Realizing that, coming to that moment of realization. Um, yeah. So, do you want to go first, or should I go first on this one?
You can go first. 'Cause I'm trying to. I mean, for me, it was multiple moments, but I'm like trying to
Mm.
pinpoint them in my head right now. So yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the moment that I realized, so okay, I'll just kind of give the setup or give the setting. I was, let me see, I must have been 30, was I 38 at this time? I can't remember, do the dates of the time, but it was 2021. It was the summer, around the summer, spring or summer of that time. And at that time, I was in a relationship. And my then partner, who was actually my fiance, we were engaged to be married. We had been in a long distance relationship through COVID, through all of that horrific nightmare, through a 9 month pregnancy with my daughter, and and then coming to the UK in the middle of all of that, and then realizing that our relationship was on really, really shaky, unstable ground, and starting to notice things that I hadn't noticed before. Like up until that point, maybe they were there in the background, but I had not ever kind of asked myself or been curious about it. I just kind of brushed it aside and just focused kind of really on survival of getting to the next moment, survival of getting through the pregnancy, finding a place where I could give birth, like Mary and Joseph or anything. There was a hospital, but it was like I was between countries. I didn't have a residency. I had gone to Toronto to visit my boys, and then I needed to fly back to Hong Kong at 6 months before I was too big and showing. I needed to find an Airbnb where I could just stay for a certain amount of time that I could just basically put down my feet, set up a crib, have a couple of things that I needed for the, nursery, gave birth to her. I went through some pretty bad postpartum depression, not knowing that it was postpartum depression, just really super tough time on me, thing on her as well, I'm sure. Um, and then our relationship, and just meeting through that long distance relationship a couple of times, noticing, wow, there's something missing in this dynamic between us, or I've started to notice things that were just a bit off. And I tried to work with him, like, what's going on here? We've always had really good communication, or so I thought, up until this point, and things just weren't making sense. And my ex-partner had been in the American military, the United States Air Force. He had retired from the military, and I was told that he told me that he had been diagnosed with PTSD, and he had trauma from his years serving. And I thought, oh, okay, this is maybe at the core of our issues, is that he's got this trauma and I'm not being who I need to be for him. I'm not supporting him enough. I'm not understanding him enough. If I could only understand him, then I would know what I need to offer to him, what I can be for him. Okay, that's going to fix it. And so I did try to ask him directly, can you help me understand, how this has impacted you, and what do you need from me, and how can I support you? I was just trying to be the fixer, the solver, the savior, the this, that, or the other, on that path for a long time. And he wasn't opening up. He wasn't giving me any answers. So I was like, okay, what's the next best thing I can do? Okay, let's say couples counseling therapy. I can go to a couples counselor and see, what can I do? How can I be the person that I need to be in order to support him and help us, which will in turn help our relationship. I actually found a counselor who had served in the military and retired himself. So I thought, oh, perfect. He's going to understand what my then fiance is going through. He's going to understand, the complexities of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. He's going to help me understand what I need to do, next steps. So I worked it out. We had an initial assessment. It worked out that we were fine. So I started to go to see this therapist a couple of times. I think a couple of times we met online. My daughter was still around 6, 7 months old at this time, so most of the time she needed me, but a couple of times I did go in person to meet him. Jane stayed with mom, so I took a bus and went down to see the therapist. And It was okay. So this is the actual story. That was the back, the background. The actual story is so I'm sitting in his office, and this is the first time that I'm in counseling therapy. Yeah, I must have been around, I think, I want to say 38. I'm just going to say 38, 38, 39. And he says to me, so, okay, I understand, Michelle. I understand the predicament that you're in. You're really super eager to understand your fiance, to know what he's gone through and why, as a result of this PTSD, he's in the place that he's in. You really want to help him. You really want to support him. I see that. I see your passion. I see your desperation. I realize that you're here because of him. But could I suggest that we're actually really here because of you? And I was just like, what? What? And a little bit later on, after I think our second or third session, he says to me, you know how you mentioned your fiance is diagnosed with PTSD? I think, and this is a non-official diagnosis, but from a counselor's perspective and from the psychotherapy work that I've done, I believe that you yourself are suffering with symptoms of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD. And I was floored. I was like, what? Like, what? What are you talking about? How could this be? Which, in hindsight, is like, duh. Of course. You were born and raised in a cult. You suffered multiple forms of abuse all through childhood, through your teenage years, through your young adult years. These experiences formed and shaped who you are. Of course, you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder or symptoms of. Um, but for me, the way I looked at it, and even the reason why I ended up or how I came to end up in the therapist office, it wasn't even about me. I went there for somebody else. And that had been the story of my life. Always looking for a quick fix, a solution, a strategy, a plan, a tactic to fix whatever was wrong in the moment. And I was really, really good at it. And I've been learning how to do that, I think, ever since childhood. I learned to read a room, read the situation, read people, understand what I needed to do, what I needed to be, how I needed to respond in order to get the result that I wanted. At the beginning, it was just survival. It was just protecting myself, making sure that I got what I needed or that the, immediate people around me that I care for got what they needed. Progressed up until this point where my relationship was falling apart. I had already had one failed relationship marriage previous to this. And I was in that place again and still trying to do the exact same thing. Fix it, fix it, fix it. And here this person is telling me, we don't need to fix anything else. We're here for you. And it wasn't even, we need to fix you. You've got some issues. It's, we are here for you. And those words hit me in a very deep way, but also in a very comforting way. Like, oh, wow, you see me? There's like a me in all of this. Like, I matter. Like, how could I matter? How could I have a role in my own life? It's so weird to see or to think about, but really that's what it came down to. And so those two things saying, could I suggest we're not here for him, we're here for you? And I think that you may be suffering with some of these symptoms that you believe, it's all about him, him, him. Let's talk about you, the you here in the room. And I think it was at that moment that I had that eureka moment, that light bulb moment where I'm like, oh, wow, is there something that I'm missing in all of this? And yes, there was. The huge thing in all of this that I was missing was that, yeah, it starts with me, right? I think that was the first moment. And then over the next few months and years, it progressed to, okay, yeah, there's a me in all of this. And what do I do about the pain? Because I was the only common denominator in all of the different issues in my life, partners I had been with, situations that had changed. But at the core of all of it was always me. And obviously, I was, again, missing something. And for all the fixing in the world, I hadn't really understood what the core issues were within myself. So yeah, that was kind of the moment that I started on that healing journey. Yeah.
Oh, as you're talking, I'm like, oh yes, oh yeah. like like and I mean, we're sisters and we grew up, same upbringing. I mean, even though we talked about, and I think in a previous episode that uh, you can have two siblings and they can have very, very same experience but very different outcomes and very different outlook on life. So I think there's some of that, but also, and I think I've told you this over the years, I'm like, why is it, do you think, that being very quite different in personality and our the way we see the world, but you notice we're kind of in this, we ended up in the same place, even within the same family dynamics. I'm like, what the hell is that about? Um, and
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
told you, like, I believe we were put into the situation, and whether or not you believe in a higher, like I know you believe in God, and I believe in, there is a higher power. I'm just not sure, about titles and labels, but I really do believe that the situations we find ourselves in are designed, whether or not we, manifest them in some way, or we attract them, or whatever, or we're put into them. Um, to heal the wounds that we have in our childhood. And we just keep getting put in these situations over and over again, like until the lesson is learned, you're going to keep repeating the experience and just in different forms. And so I'm like, interesting that we're both kind of doing the same work now. Now we're working together. And look at our family experiences. They're so similar. And now we can like really like call each other up and be like, this is just happy. Like, I know what that's like. So it's just so weird that we both ended up kind of in the same place. We kind of like
Yeah.
went full circle. We're
How about for you? Was there a particular story or moment that stands out to you where you also had that kind of like paradigm shift?
Yes, and I always tell it like as the beginning of the work that I do right now, and it's the same kind of story as you. I got into this. Now the thing is that I was in my 20s. I was doing child psychology and learning all about this, and that's why I started learning this stuff because I was like, okay, how we grew up could not have been good for us or a good model of parenting for us. And so I do not want to repeat that same pattern with my own children. So that's where I thought doing all the learning all the stuff was going to make a difference. And obviously, it gave me the knowledge, right? And so I did probably from the time I was, I had my oldest when I was 20, just turned 21. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to be learning about all this stuff and about babies and how they, what they need, not physically, but like emotionally and psychologically and all this stuff. And then obviously I was working with young children at the time. I was an early childhood educator. Um, and so learned all probably like 4 or 5 years of just like learning every single kind of modality back then that there was about children and child psychology and trying to understand. And, in my head, this all makes perfect sense. But when it came to my own kids. And the thing is, I could apply that stuff to the kids that I work with because it wasn't a personal thing for me. They weren't my kids. They didn't really trigger me. But when I went home to my own kids, boom, all of a sudden, all this stuff, it was just, I was exploding. I was angry. I was just like frustrated with them. I didn't understand why they had these needs. Um, and even in my head, I was like, I know all this stuff and I can apply it to the kids I work with. Why can't I apply it to my own kids? I'm super patient and bubbly, and I got like all the best teacher awards at schools for the schools I work with. And then I came home and I was just like this horrible, raging monster and like angry all the time and no patience for the kids. So I was just like, there's this kind of disconnect there between knowing stuff and between actually practicing it. So but I didn't put it down to trauma. I was just like, okay, maybe I just need to practice more, as we do. Just do the thing that you can't do harder.
Yeah.
And um, it all came to a head kind of like after everything. I said my whole world just kind of crumbled around my ears. I lost my job. I was going through a separation at the time. Me and my kid's dad weren't legally married, but we lived together or we were together for 11 years. So we were going through a separation. So court case, custody case, really heavy, losses financially, hiring a lawyer and going through all of that. And then going through all the emotional stuff of, trying to do what's best for the kids, but not really being sure. And like a lot of very high conflict with the ex or with my kid's dad and going through all of that. And then on top of that, with all the drama that was going on, I also lost my home, which was kind of paid for something or provided by the school that I was working at. So I lost my job at the school, lost my home on top of that because the school provided free schooling for my kids. I lost schooling for both my kids as well. I had to like find a little tiny apartment somewhere that I could afford while I looked for a new job. And at that time, my two kids went to go live with their dad, who moved to the same city that I did while all this was going on. Um, and then finally, when I kind of got back on my feet and I had my little apartment, had a little job, and I was like, okay, the kids can come back and live with me. And then the boys were just like, yeah, we don't want to live with you anymore, mom. We want to live with dad. And I was just like, what is going on? I lost everything. And then going to court on top of that. And so after all of that kind of settled, all the like the physical stuff that was going on, and I moved to the US, kind of like, okay, let's start my life new, fresh, moved to the US, and um, was in a relationship with a guy who had three kids of his own. And so moved in with him and then kind of very quickly fell into stepmom role. And I was just like, first of all, I'm just getting my confidence back as a mom. And now I'm a stepmom and having to deal with all of these dynamics and trying to blend a family and still dealing with conflict from exes. And I was just like, what am I doing? And same as you. I see, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and my kids, my now husband's kids were, he was going through a divorce, so all his kids were, really suffering from that. My boys were also dealing with the trauma of all the separation, all the upheaval, and so the kids are really, really suffering. If so how can I fix it? And I remember being on the phone to mom just one morning, and I was like, "What am I doing? I don't know how to fix this. I'm like so in over my head." And then we were talking about something, and I was like you, we've always been able to fix stuff. Always been able to okay, I'm in really low place right now. What can I do? I'm going to climb out of it. I'm going to find a solution to this problem. Okay, don't have the money right now to send all the kids to therapists. And again, not once did I think of myself. It was like, okay, it's going to be that much. No, I can't afford that. Send all the kids to individual therapists. There's got to be something I can do. I'm a teacher. I know about kids. Yeah, I'm just going to learn stuff. There's got to be stuff online. So I went online and started looking at stuff about divorced families and dynamics and that, and how to support the kids and all this stuff. And I came across counseling. Yeah, I like counseling basics. I was like, I could be a counselor. And so I went in and started studying with this, I think it's a coach himself called Kane Ramsey. I think applied psychology or something about psychology applied to modern life. Anyway. Um, and so I started studying with him and I thought, okay, this guy's going to just give me all the skills and I'm everything on a cognitive level. I'm going to know all the stuff. And the great thing about it was after, it was a video, course. And after each video course, there was like homework to do. And the homework took probably three times as long as watching each video because I was started the work and writing. And as I was doing it, I was like, whoa, it's like huge realization of yes, the problem is not, of course, there are problems in the world around you and in your family. It all starts, with you. And so his big thing was you can't do this work with anybody else until you've first done it with yourself. And so I was like, I know myself. Oh, that's going to be easy. And as I was like doing the writing, just so many things opened up. I was like, wow, I've never realized this stuff before, how much our cult upbringing and all the trauma that we had in teens and young adults really have just affected every decision I've made up until this point. And I'm like, okay. And so this course, I think, was supposed to be, I think the videos itself was like a 3-month course. It took me 9 months to finish it because I was just like doing so much. I like filled like 3 or 4 notebooks with all the like realizations and aha moments that I had. And after that, I was just like, oh, okay, like I've got some serious work to do, and I can't even think about helping my kids at all. It's like that, oxygen mask analogy, right? I am like drowning here and I'm trying to save my family. Nah, like do the work yourself first. And so very soon after that, I came across, and it's interesting because I started with her as a mentor. She was a mentor in one of the groups that I was in. And so I was like, hey, can you like supervise some of the stuff? And I was trying to like coachy trainee as well. Trying to work with people. This was probably like a year or two later. And so I started working with her as like my supervisor mentor. And then later on, some of the stuff that I was bringing to her, and she was just like, have you ever thought that it kind of the same thing, that maybe it's you that needs support? And I was like, same thing, like, huh. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of knew it, but I think maybe I didn't feel deserving of that. And I was like, if I help everybody else, then I'll be okay. And, that seems to be a lot of when you grow up with a very um, tumultuous childhood, you have to like make sure like you said, reading the room, making sure everybody else is okay before you can be okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, well, I like trust you because I know what you're doing. And like, she's like, you have to know that I'm a therapist as well. So I'm like, okay. So our relationship changed from she was kind of like my oversee mentor to my therapist. And I've been working with her for 4 years. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's been like a really beautiful kind of process. Oh, I've learned so much stuff over the years. And obviously, I've had other mentors as well along the way, other mentors, other coaches, but she's kind of been the one who's like been, I feel like my personal one. All the other ones I'm in like groups with, but she's heard like so many hours of all my trauma and helped me unpack so much stuff. So yeah, it's been really nice to kind of have that. Like, yeah, there's a me in this, and I
Yes.
deserve help as well. It's so nice after we've just been used to putting everybody else first in our lives. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you said there was very central to, I think, the confidence that we had to get to kind of start, okay, I'm going to do is that I'm undeserving of this. Like who am I who says, yeah, I need something for myself. I need therapy. I need help. Who am I to say that? It's so hard because of we were brought up with this ideology that self does not matter. We do not matter. We are so low and just beneath all of that. We need to put, first of all, God right front and center. Then comes his plan for us, and then the needs for the greater good. And if we fit in somewhere in that and we're able to support that greater, bigger, more splendid vision, then great, there's room for us. But if not, no, you don't matter at all. And that is so not true. I mean, on my personal learning journey and the discovery that I've done is that no, it always starts with you first. You have to be good in yourself. And of course, there's not just place for you. The place that you take up, that's where it all starts from. And if that doesn't happen, nothing else can happen, right, in the larger, grander scheme of things. So it's such a different way of looking at things and understanding that. And you kind of get it like on a cerebral level in the beginning, but it takes a really long time until you can actually feel that, oh, yeah, that's true. That resonates with me. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years and years and years. And I think even once you reach that place where I feel it in my body to be true, you still have to remind yourself from time to time, yeah, I matter. I'm important. It all starts with me, you know? Yeah, it's been a good, beautiful journey. And I guess that answers the first question. We have a lot of different points to
Well,
talk about. So we'll just try to go on to the next one. So the next one is so after our realization, what was the plan that we made for healing and recovery? Was it like a set plan? Was it very constructive and systematic, or did it kind of happen more organically? Yeah, how was it for you?
oh, you see, me coming in being like, I can fix everything. I know teacher background, right? So I remember going to my therapist and going like, my notes. Okay, this is how I want to heal. We're first going to tackle my like early childhood, and then we're going to tackle my like older, elementary years, and then adolescence, and then my. So I thought it was all like linear, right? I think people who are just like this is how it's going to heal, and this is the way I'm going to do it, and then I was even putting time limits on it. Like I think this is probably going to take a year. This one maybe a little bit shorter because I don't see too much trauma there. And it was so it was so cute
Hilarious.
about it, right?
You're like
um,
therapy memes. Like, oh,
oh my
what
goodness.
to do? What? Oh, wow. Oh,
New
that's so
list of
it's so
therapy. Oh my
cute, so funny, and yeah, just um, it's so
it's
because
so
it just
funny when you
shows
hear
you
about it.
how different it really is to how we like to do things and how we want to do things and what seems rational, logical, cost effective, all of that. It's just so not even in the same ballpark. Yeah.
Now that yeah, back of that, I was like, oh wow, you were in for such a huge realization.
Well,
Um,
me
and
too.
so one of the first things that you taught me was like, okay, like obviously super honoring of my plan, and this is this is how you see. And then she just said, for a lot of people, they think healing is linear. It's like da da da, like life is. Um, it's actually more like a spiral. And then I remember she like pulled up her notebook and drew it all out for me. And she was just like, where? And I was like, what do you mean it's like a spiral? You mean you don't get anywhere? She's just like, it often feels like that sometimes. Like when, you start something and then you think you're healing and then you kind of experience these same situations. Like life is going to test you. Isn't just again, but I didn't realize like, oh, this is ever gonna it's all gonna be on a cognitive level. I'm just gonna know this stuff. And she's like, yes, but life is gonna test you, just like the world. You're gonna learn something, then you're gonna be tested to see if you've actually passed that test. And if you have, you're just gonna go a layer deeper. You're gonna think like, why am I back here again? Why am I still struggling with this stuff? It's not that you haven't made any progress, you're just experiencing it on a deeper level. There's a deeper level of healing that you have to do. And I was just like, what? What a waste of time. I was just like, okay, let's go into this and let's see what happens. And obviously there was some structure in our thing. I was like, today I really want to talk about my sometimes I brought up stuff that was coming up in my life. Like, hey, this happened and let's explore this and what feelings was I feeling and what does this mean and bring it back to childhood. Other times it was like, you know what, life is going pretty good right now. I had this thing that I kind of like this issue that maybe came up in a previous session that kind of stuck with me. And I realized like maybe I have some more work to do around this issue that came up when I was 3, for example. Could we talk about that? And so she was very good in letting me either bring up stuff that was coming up very, bigly. That's not like Trump there, bigly. No, like super. What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like very present in my life right now, or my life is going pretty good. There's nothing too, pressing. Can we talk about this one topic that maybe came up in the previous session? So she was really good in letting me lead that. And other times, with the insight that a lot of psychotherapists have, she's like, I've noticed you've been talking about these couple things in these last sessions. I'm wondering if you've considered that maybe it's because of this. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then we explore that, just like, whoa, and then new level of, learning, new level unlocked. And it's like, that's so cool. So yeah, it was no real plan, but at the same time, it was very structured. And so I really appreciated that because yeah, if she left it up to me, I would have been like all over the place.
Uh,
What about you and your therapist?
yeah, just as you're talking, a couple of things came up to me. I love the analogy or illustration of a spiral that she used because I think that helps really to express and kind of define how it happens. I guess you can see that you're going a level deeper, or maybe you start off here and you're trying to get there, and then you're kind of going up the spiral. But whatever it is, sometimes it feels like the same cycle, or you're in a loop, but it's not the same. And I think another time you mentioned it's like you've learned skills and tools on that circuit. And then the next time you go around, you have all that and you can then use it to kind of get to the next level or level up or however if you want to look at it this way or that way. So I love that. I think that's a really helpful way of looking at healing. And then another thing you said was you were like, oh, what does that mean? It feels like I'm going to be on this kind of loop or merry-go-round forever. And I think it is a lifestyle choice when you choose to go on this healing journey. It's not just like I'm going to start at this date and there's a finish and a graduation date here, and then I'm done and over with, and I'm out, and then I'm
Wish.
going to move on in life and go do all those things that I said I was going to, and just kind of put my life on hold for these things. It's like once you decide you're really in this, that's going to be a lifestyle choice for the rest of your life because healing doesn't ever stop. It's like you said, another layer, you're going deeper, but you grow, right? And the place that you're at 6 months from now is not who you are right now. or a
Mhm.
year from now, or 5 years from now, or 30 years from now. You're growing, you're learning, you're evolving. So that healing is going to look and feel different over time. So I think that's another thing, like if we want to just put it neatly into a box and have like a start and a finish date, it's not really going to work. Yes, we may be able to learn some, little gimmicky tools and this, that, or the other. But if we really want it to have like a deep transformational heart level change, it's something that we want to be committed to for the rest of our life. And I think then that also means then we can bring along others for the ride. We can kind of, if you say, I'm going to start here and finish there and then never look at that again, I don't know, it kind of, for me, I feel like you kind of waste that opportunity or you would kind of lose out on so much more that is available. But when you're making this choice in your life and you're going on, other people are like, wow, she made that choice. And now, we knew her before and we knew where she was. Look at the kind of hope, maybe they're subtle, maybe they're very, very explicit, but look at the changes in their life. Let me in on that. Let me know a bit more about that. And then that's when you kind of take other people with you, hopefully, which is another part, I think, for us, a really huge part of our healing journey is sharing what we have, bringing others along for the ride, hopefully a very good ride. Yeah. Okay, for
Yeah,
me,
we get a little bit of that. Yay, we get to help others with that.
yeah.
Before it was all about helping others, right? We didn't matter. It was all about others. And now it's like, yay, I matter. I'm putting all this focus on myself and my growth and my healing and investing really heavily in myself as well. It's like, then how can I give back to others, right? Because I do think there is a balance. Some people, it all becomes about them. And you probably know some of these people and you just talk to them, you're just like, it's like it sounds really great. It's all esoteric stuff. And I just watched a reel last night and I was like, when you go on a date with a spiritual F boy, um, it's like, let's go back to my place and try out my grounding mat. Let's go look at the cards and see if we're meant to be together. If we're meant to be. And I was like, you've met people like that who are just kind of I'm sure the work they're doing is beautiful, but they're kind of like so turned inward and everything is about them. There's no relatability. And I find those people are just like, God bless you, man. I'm sure you're on a really great journey, but I cannot relate to you because it's all about you. Right.
It's
And
kind of very insulated in a bubble where you're like,
yeah,
I'm very happy to just be here. And you almost kind of feel, in a sense, it could be a little bit artificial because if you were to break that bubble and join the real world, it would upset your little microcosm of what you feel. Oh, I'm healed. I'm, evolved. I've reached nirvana. You kind of have to step out of that and still be in the real world and faced with a lot of the things that are there. It could be possibly, re-triggering or re-traumatizing. The world is a very, very painful, difficult, traumatizing place. So if you've gone enough further along on your journey, you're going to be okay being out of that little bubble. Yeah.
and I think that's kind of what I realized about the work that I'm continuing to do. But it's like that's the purpose of it. The purpose isn't to get the world to I mean, ideally, yes, but the purpose isn't to be in this safe place, this nirvana where nothing ever challenges you. Our job is, and if we know we're doing it right, is being able to go out into the world, to talk to people, have triggering conversations, and be tested on all the stuff that you're supposedly learning, right? And seeing like, oh, am I able to regulate myself? Am I able to hold space? Am I able to have compassion for this person's point of view, even though it's completely different to mine?
Yeah.
That's the test, not surrounding yourself with, echo chamber of spirituality and everyone saying, singing kumbaya with you. No, that's not the purpose of it.
Yeah.
Ideally, the whole world would be like that, but it is kind of, like you said, insulating yourself and almost like that's not what the work is.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's a balance, finding the right balance. Yeah. Um, okay, so if I was saying for me, what did I do? I was intentional. I knew what I knew what I wanted, not necessarily what I needed. I knew what I wanted, and I knew that I did have a plan. This is a really good question, actually. Like, what did I do? Maybe I'll just say what I did. So I continued with that therapy with that specific therapist, and they helped me to really navigate that immediate situation in my life, which was once I realized what it was, what it was all about. I realized immediately after doing some work on myself, ooh. this is not a relationship that I want to be in. And that's the really beautiful thing. Beautiful and painful. It's a double-edged sword because counseling and therapy is going to help you discover who the authentic, real you is, the unseen you, and all of that. So when you finally shine a lot light on who you are and you discover, oh, yeah, here's the me that existed all along. What do I really want? First of all, who am I? What do I really want? What are the values that are important to me? What are my non-negotiables? I had no non-negotiables up until that point. I was like I said, thick serve everybody. I'll become whoever you need me to be. In many senses, I was, well, first of all, I was incongruent. I would become who I needed to be in order to fit what I felt was a perfect match. Like that's the movie we watched, Runaway Bride, right? She had no sense of core sense of identity. She would change for whomever she was with. I was like that in many ways. And so once I was, like the therapist shone a spotlight on me, this is who I am, and the kind of slowly sense of self started to develop, I was able to know who I was, know what was important to me, what I wanted in life, and what I didn't want. And then that's when I could start to kind of put my boundaries, again, boundaries, a huge thing, never had boundaries in my life, didn't even know that they existed. Put boundaries in place and see, is this person going to meet me? Do they even want to meet who I really am? Or are they just looking me to mirror them and them to mirror me and for us to be like this, facade of whatever it was we were, but not a healthy, um, healthy, functioning, thriving relationship? Absolutely not. And I realized, no, this isn't what I want. This isn't healthy for me. And instead of trying to make it work, making something that was broken work, I had to just say, sorry, this isn't going to work for me. I was able to step out of that relationship, call an end to it. And that was kind of a really important moment in my life where I understood. And it was a very, very painful decision. I was probably at the lowest point, one of the lowest points in my entire life. Again, being a single mom with a 6, 7 year month old daughter, no country of residency in between two countries because we were planning to be married. We were, engaged. So I was waiting to join him in the US. Had given up everything in my life before him, job, again, place to stay, stable, kind of a stable life at that time, and was just in the middle of nowhere. I felt I had no roots, no stability. It was really just topsy-turvy. Felt like I was in the middle of a very, very deep, dark, stormy ocean with like no tether, nothing to keep me in place other than my faith. I did have faith at that point. I rediscovered my faith. There was a church and some members from that church who were really supporting me through that. And I did have mom and dad as well who were supporting me through that. And you as well on that end of, the people in my life who were there for me, but it still felt like so uncertain. Um, I did finish the therapy with him, and I kind of felt like the therapeutic relationship that this therapist and I had, it needed to kind of come to a close to kind of offer a container and that closure to that experience in my life. I didn't want to continue to take that forward. And I think that's another thing when you enter into counseling and therapy and you start to discover who you are and you have a sense of self, you grow up quite quickly. It doesn't have to take forever and ever and just go on forever. You understand, okay, this is what I need. You can also take a look at the past choices and places that you've been in your life, and you can look at where you're at now, and then make a decision, where am I now? What do I need, and what do I need to do in order to take the next step? And I think we can learn to have faith and trust in ourselves, trust our gut, trust our intuition. That was one of the things that I really needed to learn very quickly, very early on. Trust myself. We were never allowed to trust ourselves before. When I learned I can trust myself, look at how far I've come. Look at all the hurdles I've passed. Look at all the very, very unshaky ground I've been on and very dangerous, whether practically, physically, literally dangerous or emotionally unsafe, psychologically unsafe places. Look at how far I've come. I've come through this really incredible, painful relationship, breakdown and then ending. what do I need to do now? I was intentional in the way that I looked, I studied, I really studied myself and my choices and my patterns and said, okay, if I want the future to look different than the past, I need to do something different now. This is where it counts. And I had so much pushing me to always do what I'd always done. So, for example, it was very hard for me to be single. I always needed to either be in a relationship or have a relationship just on the line, like someone who I could reach out to, someone who I could build something with, or feel like I was doing something towards that. I couldn't just be okay with being a single woman. It was very, very hard for me. I always felt like I would only exist well in a relationship with someone else. I needed to complement someone else in order for there to be like a picture perfect whole. And so very quickly I was like, okay, I need to get on a dating app. I need to find a way to put myself out there, put myself back on the market, get myself back in the game. And even more so now because look, I'm a single mother. I have a child to take care of. I mean, not that that's any kind of advantage. That's more like people would say a disadvantage. But I was like, but I need to take care of myself. This is about being practical. This is about looking forward for my future. I felt like almost there was like I was almost on automatic drive to just go and do that. And I remember that one of those evenings I was there on the app and I was like, okay, I'm going to start building my profile. I was like, whoa, hold on. What am I doing? That first moment of self-awareness where you realize, oh, I've seen this before. What happens now? Something not very good, that sort of a thing. And so I'm there in the moment, and like everything is pushing me to, you need to do this. This is what's safe for you. This is what's good for you. This is what you know. And the other part of me being like, hold on, kind of like a gentle, guiding, empathic, compassionate voice, but like, wait a second, do you really want that for yourself? Is that really what you need right now? And thankfully, I was able to, I don't know, in that moment, but like just be like, okay, I've seen this before, and on a deep, deep level, I know that that's not what's right for me. I need to just put that to the side. So thankfully, I was able to not open an account, put away, online dating, social media, that part of it for a while, and just really focus on myself. Like, what do I need to heal? Like, look at the place that I'm at. Do I really want to continue to repeat that pattern? So just putting that on hold a bit. And one thing that really helped me was to do reading during that time because there are so many really good books out there that can, help with healing and recovery. Sometimes it's hard to immediately right away launch into really deep exploration and engagement in your story if you're not really even sure what it is. So I did read a lot. One of the books that was recommended to me was Healing the Wounded Heart by Dr. Dan Allender. And it's directed to survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And the first time this book was recommended to me, it was actually by a counselor I found on BetterHelp. And at that time, I felt was quite expensive and the sessions were quite short. And I found a really amazing therapist who also came from a faith tradition and belief. And I felt like I wanted someone like that to speak to that part of me because that was something that was really holding me and helping me on my journey. So I wanted someone who had a Christian worldview as well, and he did. He had a lot of experience. He was a pastor, also served in the U.S. Air Force when he was younger, had 5 kids, served as a missionary abroad. So he had a very rich, full faith background, just who he was and he was able to answer a lot of the questions that I had and speak to my experiences. And then he said, you know what, Michelle, after hearing your story a little bit and what you're going through, I have this book. And he said the title of the book. I would really suggest that you buy it and take a little bit of time to read it. So I did buy the book and I read it, and because it's all about childhood sexual abuse, and I was like, okay, yes, in my childhood there may have been some things that happened to me that weren't right. I know that they probably had some effect on me, but not so much so. I mean, look at me. I'm a full-grown woman. I've had 3 children. I've gone through life. I've done all these things. It can't be affecting me that much. And I kind of looking through, I'm like, yeah, thank you for the book, but it's really not for me. And I just put it on my shelf. And then um, over time, as I was kind of like in this space, like thinking, what is the next step? What do I want to do in my life? What do I do to get myself out of where I'm kind of just feeling stuck? I did come back to that point where, okay, I think I do need to start meeting people, even if it's not in a romantic way. I need to start to, just meet people and start to build my confidence that, I'm okay. I am an attractive person. I'm lovely to talk to, lovely to be with. But when I put myself out into that space, I saw red flags everywhere. Everyone I came across, ooh, that person's like this person's like that person's like this. It's like probably all of the red flags that I had ignored from childhood up until now because I was just like so concerned about pleasing everybody and being what everybody needed me to be. I was probably a big red flag myself. I ignored all the red flags around me. But now it was like years and years of suppressing looking at red flags. Now they're like boom, 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 boom. I could barely get through a conversation without being like, oh, this person's like this and this person's like this. I was so hyper vigilant and in like a constantly activated space. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm never going to be able to go
What
forward in
have I
my life.
done?
Oh my goodness, like what's wrong with me? What do I do? So at that time I was thinking, oh, maybe I should go back to that counselor that I saw before. He was very helpful, the one from BetterHelp. And I was like, oh, didn't he give me some homework to do? Yeah, he suggested that book. Oh, I haven't read that book. It's still sitting on my shelf. Okay, I'm gonna be a good girl and go do my homework. Took the book off the shelf, and this time, so this was like maybe 4 or 5 months later after I'd kind of like, so timing again, another thing, timing is super important in our journeys. Timing can be the difference between us getting it and us just like pushing it to the side or just
I've
missing
got a
it.
story on that as well.
Timing,
That's yeah.
yeah. So now, a couple months later, I take the book off the shelf, and as I'm opening it and reading through it, it was like this book was written for me. I was like, how is it possible that this psychotherapist doctor guy knows me and knows my story? It spoke so deeply to my heart, to my soul. I mean, I was like crying through most of the book, from the beginning through the end. It's like splattered with teardrops everywhere. But it was like that being seen, like the first time going back to the therapist's office where there's a me in all of this. And I have an experience that is, in a sense, universal. It's like it's not just happening to me. Other people go through this too. And it's a real thing. And it's a painful thing. And it's something that impacts you for the rest of your life. Oh, this is my story. This is what happened to me. It's just such an amazing, beautiful book. And Dr. Dan Allender and his work has been so going back to the plan. After reading that book, I read a lot more of his books, and I found that he had created this program that's called Narrative Focused Trauma Care. And so I applied for that and I entered the program. So while this program is academic and it is to help you gain theory and skills and practice for counselors and therapists to use in their own line of work, again, it all starts with you, right? You have to be able to do the work to experience yourself before you can be like, oh yeah, I can see how my own healing journey was, and now I can bring those things to others. So that was a big part of my healing journey. A very expensive journey, I would say, but definitely worth it because, I mean, yes, I was learning skills and hopefully those skills and that experience and expertise I'll be able to use that in the future. I am already, but it really was about me and my story, my childhood stories, what had happened to me, how they had happened, the impact that it had left on me, and then kind of going forward what are you going to do now, So I would say, yeah, I was intentional about what I wanted. And also over time, I developed a sense and I was able to intuit what is the next step for me. Not that I always knew it in the moment, but kind of as you take little steps along the way, sometimes it's as you take the steps, then the way becomes clear. It's like you have like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. You can have an intention and you have to be committed to it. And as you're on that path, you kind of see the way open up for you. Yeah, that answers that question. Okay, I'm gonna let you talk now.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about timing.
Mhm.
Yeah, because sometimes I think we push it. We're like, oh, I'm in this stage, and it should happen for me right now, and like the plan, right? It needs to go according to plan, and it's just rarely goes. I think the plan that you make as your traumatized self is like you follow that plan, you're just going to like end up back in the same place again, right?
Mm.
And he said it's kind of like as you take that step and what is presented to you, at least what happened to me, there was so many like forks in the road, like choices, like what are you going to do? Are you going to kind of go down your familiar pattern, everything that feels safe, everything that feels right? You this is you're telling yourself, oh, this is what I've always done. This is what's kind of worked for me. Or down this path that's like you have no, it's like foggy. You have no idea. I have no idea. So what am I going to choose? Am I going to keep doing more of the same thing, or am I going to take a risk and go down this new path? And I can't see. I have no idea how it's going to work. I can't see anything ahead, and we keep coming to those forks in the road. Um, and I think one of the things I learned was that there are different times, and the one of the coach I'm working with now, but this was like a program I took like a year ago, and he was talking about how where we think we are may not actually be where we are in our healing journey. And he uses a like sports analogy and talks about like somebody like a athlete who's injured and how they have different stages. One is like say you injure your Achilles tendon or something like that, right? Um, and so we have recovery stage. Then we have like after recovery, are you going to go back and run and run a marathon? No, you have a kind of like almost like active recovery where you're getting back into it. Oh, I think at the first one there's less rest, like you're off your feet completely. Then there's like recovery, kind of active recovery where you're pushing yourself slowly. And then there's like performance space where you're back to where you used to be and it's like you're taking off, right? And so much of the time I was like, I'm in the active, I'm not in the active recovery. I'm in the performance stage. I'm gonna have this plan for this. Like this was me in 2023, I think. This year, my year, right? Everybody starts off with their huge big dreams and vision board for the year. This is gonna be my year, yeah. And I didn't realize at that time I was like in probably healing stage.
Mm.
And so I'm like, pushing myself to get the results as if I was in a top peak performance stage. And really, I'm in a healing stage. So it's like me trying to run a marathon with a broken foot. And I'm
Mm.
like, why am I not getting anywhere? Why is everything so hard? Duh. Right. And so once I kind of realized like like be honest about yourself. What stage are you in? And be honest about what's coming up in your life. If you're going through financial difficulties, if you're, bankrupt or you're going through a divorce, you're probably not going to be at peak performance state. You're probably in the I need to rest. I need to really nurture and take care of myself. And when you feel, we talk about resourcing later, resourced, and you have resources around you, both physical, both people around you, financially, you're in a good spot emotionally with your health as well. Then you're probably more likely to make the progress that you want to make, right? Rather than my world's crumbling around my ears, but I'm gonna, you know, reach some huge result that I've never gotten before. Which incidentally, I'm gonna do this thing that I've never done before, and there's been no evidence for that. And you're going from 0 to 100, and you're thinking that that's gonna work, right? Gradual stages. Um, but interesting that you talk about timing because I think it was probably a year and a half ago when I was talking about, kind of going through a different stage, kind of like not knowing, kind of as I'm in my late 30s, going into my 40s, and my body's changing, my energy levels are changing, and just kind of like I don't know who I'm supposed to be now. Am I supposed to be energetic and everything that I was in my 20s? Am I supposed to be slowing down and going more gentle? Like, but I still feel a lot of passion and drive in me, but my body isn't quite matching
Mm.
my inner, desires and stuff. What's going on? Like, and so she recommended me Woman Who Run with the Wolves by, I think her name is Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And it's interesting because it was about a year and a half ago that she recommended this book to me. And so I got on audiobook. I don't really like reading. I'm more of a listener. Um, and so I listened to it, and she has a very distinct way of talking. So I was just like, listen to probably like 5 minutes of the audiobook. I'm like, nope, not for me. Don't like her style. Turn it off. And it kind of kept like because she mentioned it a couple other times, like, oh, in this book and in this book it says this, and I was like, yeah, I haven't really listened to it. And then just at the beginning of this year, I was just feeling like there is this change. Like,
Mm.
I don't know what it is. You know, it wasn't like an external change, but something in me was like looking for something. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's this book that I kind of dipped my toe in and never went back to reading it again. And so the beginning of it was the 3rd of January, so literally like just a couple of weeks ago. And I went and I walked and I was like going through some emotional stuff, you know, beginning of the year and kind of feeling frustrated. And went on a walk and then just laid down under a tree and listened to it. And same thing, like crying. I was like, whoa, it like so spoke to me. But,
Mm.
and I just met with my therapist yesterday, and I was like, had I read it a year and a half ago, would not have had the same effect. I would have been,
Mm.
nice book, whatever. But
Yeah.
I needed to be at this point, this pain point in my life for those words to really mean something to me and to really resonate. So yeah,
Mm.
it's so interesting. And that sometimes that's why going back and almost kind of reviewing things that maybe did not resonate with you, but if somebody recommended it, it's they probably saw something. But if it doesn't necessarily resonate for you right now, don't just be like, that's it's totally bullshit. Like come back to it at another point in your healing and see because it really might make a difference. And yeah,
Mm.
that's kind of like, ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about timing.
Mm. Very true. All right. So, oh, I think we just kind of answered actually what were the key moments or milestones in our healing journey. Um, Other than what you've already shared, were there any other things that key moments, milestones, things that really stood out for you and that helped you
Yes.
kind of make that take the next step?
I think that as trauma survivors, we, like you said, we know all the stuff. We read books, we take courses, you know, and when people talk to us, like I was talking to somebody else and said, sometimes we know more, like we feel like we know more than our therapist. Sometimes you're just like,
Mm.
yeah, they're doing one modality, and I've taken this modality and this modality. What are you talking about? Well, actually, it's more like this, right? It's so easy for us who know like whose strength has been to study and to learn to almost discount other people's knowledge and experience because we feel we know as much as them or we feel we know ourselves better, we understand ourselves better, right? um, and what was something that was really profound yet so hard to do was feel. And growing up the way we did, it was not safe to feel at all. Like we felt things and we were punished for it right away, right? So we had to stay on our heads. And I think feeling is, I mean, obviously feeling is the opposite of thinking. You're using two different parts of your biology, right? You want different parts of the brain as well. And we got so good at needing to be in this survival mode of spotting the danger, going into the room, reading the room right away. Who's safe? Who's not? Who can I latch onto for support? Who's going to be a drain on me? Right? We got so good at that. We had to for our survival. And when we've come out of that, what I've noticed that I went in, I had all this knowledge, and I was like, oh, huh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And what my therapist was so good at was I can see what I'm saying to you. Everything is on right up here. Go down into here. Go down here. How does that feel? And it was so hard. And I just literally felt this part of me going, it's like going, trying to keep an apple down. It just keeps popping up, right? And it kept doing that. And it was just so hard to stay in feeling and sensing and all these things, all these tools that or all these like somatic tools that we never developed as kids because it wasn't safe to work like bodybuilders at the gym. They're super strong, but try to get them to stretch. And they're just like, no, what? Can't even touch my toes. That's how it felt. Head level, super good, 100% A to B, super fast. But asked me to feel, and I was like, where I'm, stumbling around the dark. I don't know what I'm doing. So that is something that I really found super pivotal to the healing that I've done is developing those skills. Like, the bodybuilder, put down the weights and start doing some yoga, right? It's just so weird. But now that I've done it and obviously it's still a work in progress. It does not happen overnight. It takes people years of practice. But yeah, that's what I felt like. Like I really want to help people understand the benefits of just getting out of your head and into your body and feeling things. And obviously that's not be all end all, but for us that for us, I guess, trauma survivors who have to live up in our heads for safety, yeah, it's a scary thing, but it's also super necessary, I think, to just become a bit more balanced.
Yeah, to be able to feel things and to be able to connect what we think about something to how we're feeling about it. And it's that integration where there's healing. Yeah, that is so, so real. I remember, yes, doing some of those feeling exercises where we're taking those core emotions. What is it? I think it's like fear, happiness, or is it joy,
Mm.
sadness, disgust? There's like 4 or 5 core ones. And then the exercise was to just think about something that makes you feel that way and then stay with that emotion for 90 seconds. Joy for me was okay, I could do that. I think fear was also okay. It was really hard at the get-go for me to feel angry. I had a
Same.
block. Had a block to anger. I was getting angry, but about not being able to feel angry, but then not being able to allow myself to feel angry toward it. Anger was hard, yeah. Which again, it's such a core emotion, and that allowing ourselves to feel angry about things when anger is the appropriate response to certain things that we go through in our life. Yeah. So learning to recognize identify and then allow ourselves to fully feel those emotions. And then over time, it doesn't become so threatening. I know what it feels like. I know I can ride the wave. I know that, I can come through the other side. And then I think it's like what you put in one of your videos um, for your kids is that if it lasts longer than that time, it's not an emotion, it's a feeling. And that's because there's a story, there's something attached to it. So let's work then with that. And again, we weren't taught these things. I mean, we weren't even taught them. We were not allowed to even know that these things exist. I think there are, different families or cultures or certain circles where it isn't taboo. It is talked about, but it's just not really known. There's not enough education. Thank God that now at this time and place, there is a lot of psychoeducation. There are so many ways for children and teens and young adults to learn about these things and to have these conversations. So yeah, come a far way. Um, yeah, for me, key moments and milestones in my healing journey. Um, yeah, okay, so I can think of one that really, because I don't think we have time for much more than one, but for so long, I felt that the reason why it took me about 10 years to even step into a therapist office, this is after leaving the cult and realizing, well, things there really weren't right. I'm not sure exactly what it all was about, but I have a good guess that things went wrong. And having a lot of questions and having a lot of confusion took me 10 years because, first of all, I didn't know that these things where we were living in China at the time when we left, there weren't a whole lot of resources or avenues to seek these, support out mental health and well-being. I didn't know where would I find it? Would I find this person at a hospital? Would I have to go to some like a psychiatric agency or, where would I go? And then also the taboo and the unknown and the stereotypes. So if I look on the outside like everything's good, I've got, my business that I'm running on the side, I'm taking good care of my kids, I've got a loving, marriage, I have a good relationship with everyone. If I look like everything's okay, then everything's got to be okay, right? So as long as you're able to keep up that image and that facade and still like say, oh yes, I'm spiritual and I'm growing and I'm into personal development and I'm look everyone, look at all these boxes that I'm checking, this sort of a thing. Then why do I really need to go to counseling or therapy? Why do I need to talk to someone? I can take care of myself. I can read books. I can go online. Everything's there, I don't need to talk to anyone. So that's why one of the reasons why it took me so long. And when I finally actually did step into someone's office, it wasn't even for myself, it was someone else. And I kind of stumbled into it accidentally. I don't think I possibly would ever have gone for myself. But once I was there was this huge feeling of, and I didn't know it at the time, what it really was shame.
Mm.
Shame of no one could possibly understand my story. My story is so particular and unique and strange and weird. Like, how many children or young adults or grown adults can say that they were born and raised in a religious cult? And how many people can say that they experienced so many different forms of abuse? How many people can say that they were separated from their parents? And I know even now, as I'm saying it, people can say, well, actually, it doesn't sound too far off. But when you're in that trauma state, you feel so lonely, so isolated, and so cut off from everything else, which is one of the forms of trauma symptom, is that you feel like no one could possibly understand your experience. It is so unique to you. So even if I was to talk to someone about it, how would they be able to help me? Or if I were to talk to other, similar survivor victims or people in my say, their stories would be different to mine. So my story is my own. And you almost like guard it very, um, I don't know, ferociously, like, no, my story is my own. And because it's this way, you almost refused, at least for me, in my case, I should be saying it about me. I wanted to refuse seeking help out because I was so sure that there was no help available to me. And then it was just like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I was like, no, people wouldn't be able to understand my story. But slowly, through a little bit of, counseling, the therapy, a little bit over time, I started to realize maybe it's not quite so not bad as it seems, but maybe I'm not so special in the way that I'm the only one who has trauma. It's my trauma. No one else can have it. I started to be like, oh, okay, so this is not what I thought it was. And my therapist is saying this about other people and situations. And I've just read this book and I realized that, children, adult survivors of childhood sexual trauma, lots of people have experienced this. And it's not such an, isolated thing. It's actually quite common and, sadly, but it is. And it just kind of a little bit over time, my awareness started to just kind of expand. And I started to be like, oh, okay. So maybe it's not all of these things. I thought all these things, and now I'm discovering something else. So it just kind of put me into a space to open my mind to the possibility that perhaps there is help for me out there. And then that allowed me to enter into this trauma focused and narrative focused trauma care program. So I had read Allender's work and I just really loved his approach. I loved his philosophy. It just resonated so well with me on like a bodied level. So once in the program is so it's narrative focused. So essentially, we meet over the course of 8 months of 4 intensive days where we write a 1,000 word narrative of a childhood story of harm. So from the ages of 4 to 18 years old. So you remember a story, you choose it, you write it out, and then in throughout the 4 day weekend, we break out into small groups and then we share our story and it is engaged by the other people in the small group. So there's 6 of us in one group and then one facilitator. And the moment, so I was saying, what was like a moment for me as I'm reading my story to the women in my small group. Um, I read my story for the first time, and the facilitator asks me, she says to me, Michelle, what is going through your mind as a 7-year old little girl in that moment? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And this thought just came. It felt like floodgates to me. And I'd never had this thought or this feeling or anything that, lent to this before. But it was, Mom and Dad, where are you? And in that moment, I was like, oh, it's not, yes, I was born in a cult. Yes, there was a lot of abuse. Yes, all these other things. But the core issue, the core wound at all of that was, Mom and Dad, where are you? They weren't there. I'm not protected. I'm vulnerable. Where are you? And how many little children all over the world throughout history have felt that same way? Mom, Dad, where are you? And that for me was a really key moment because I realized that we have core wounds, and these wounds are universal. They're not just particular to me. And I think for so long, I wanted to be on my own because if you can be on your own, then you've got to struggle on your own. And then you almost have an excuse for not getting better and going down that path because, well, this is me. This is my experience. And you don't know it and you don't understand it. And you kind of give yourself a get out of jail free card because you don't want to admit, hey, other people also have suffered trauma. Their trauma is particular to them. They have their own story. They have their own wounds. But at the end of the day, we all have this fear and this wound of abandonment, of being rejected. So there is something that's incredibly healing in that, recognition that we can find community in this, and there are others in this too. Yes, our stories are unique and particular to ourselves, and that's never going to change. You want to honor that, you want to hold it really sacred, and at the same time, join in with others and understand that these core wounds, other people have suffered them too, and there is healing on that journey that we can go through together. So that was a moment for me, was like, it was huge because I thought my trauma was about everything else other than mommy and daddy, where are you? So yeah, that was a big thing for me. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like as you're sharing that, I'm just remembering like I think it was an exercise I did, and it was like some meditation exercise, and it came down to I think there's like four or five like core wounds, and one is like yes, I'm one is like I'm too much, one's I'm not enough, one's like I'm unlovable, and I forgot what the fourth or fifth one was, but it
Mm,
was basically take your big story, take the big thing that happened to you, and you just kind of distill it down more and more and more. And she's like, the woman who was doing this, I did it with a retreat of like 500 people, and probably maybe only one or two was like, nah, it's not one of those. Maybe it's something else. But like 98% of them were all like, yep, it's one of these five moons.
mm,
Like, and can you imagine like 500 people all having completely different life experiences, different cultures, and all comes to because we're all human at the end. We all start out as babies with the same core needs, and that's
yeah.
that's why I'm like I love this kind of stuff because I'm like you can distill it down to literally the first 3 months of your life, and if you want to get into epigenetics, oh, even earlier, right? What happened to you when you're in the womb, and then
Yeah.
mother's trauma, which is timeline therapy, which is also something I did. And I'm like, wow, I'm carrying around some trauma that's not even mine. It's my grandma's. And it
Mm,
was pretty interesting. So
yeah.
yeah, oh, it's amazing.
Those core wounds and what we can do to kind of get to the story, get to the heart of the story, and then answer them. Yeah. Okay, well, I realize that we're running short on time, but there are kind of two things that we want to wrap up in today's podcast. And the first is, so if the title of this is like healing from trauma and therapy, so how has therapy helped us, on our journeys? What is the function of therapy? Why enter into it? How has it helped us? Um, and I guess we could speak a little bit kind of like what are some of the like do's and don'ts. What has worked for us? What hasn't worked for us? What would we do again? And what would be like, maybe we won't try that again. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is we'd like to share and introduce a really exciting project that Vicky and I are working on together. We'll probably just have a moment at the very end to introduce it and highlight a little bit what it's about. But yeah, those are the last two things that we'll cover. I think we have, yeah, not much longer. We'll try to finish up in about 10, 15 minutes. Okay, so therapy for you, Vix. Do's and don'ts. What has worked? What hasn't worked? Yeah.
Oh, so it kind of touches on what I talked about before about I started off with all the cognitive models. So I'm trained cognitive behavioral therapist practitioner, and I did like neuro linguistic programming and like 22 hours of training on that, and it's all very cognitive based, all up in the head, right? And this is something I noticed as well is that obviously we have this outdated model that the brain controls everything. And for so long, yes, for so long, our understanding, science understanding, yes, it did. The brain controls everything. The body's just kind of like this puppet, and the brain is like, top of the food chain. And the more I think when I was doing these modalities, like, okay, just change your thoughts, change your life, right? All these things. And so much, probably like it's changing now, but definitely like 2, 3 years ago, everything I was looking on social media, everything was all brain based. And I was like, okay, again, just, validating more of what I thought I knew, right? It's all up in the head. You just need to think differently. You just got to figure stuff out up here. And when I was doing some of these modalities, there was a part that really made sense to me. I'm like, yes, that makes sense. It made sense up in my head, but because I also was doing this somatic work with my therapist, that she had taught me to start listening to my intuition, listening to my body, what feels right. And of course, tiny, tiny little voice, because it's still a baby. I like literally just discovered it. But gradually doing more of these rah rah up in your head thoughts and everything. Thoughts are, king, and just some little voice in my body going, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel right. No, it's not right. I'm just like, shh, let's just do this more of what we do already, right? And kind of gradually, as I started doing more, like, probably 2 years of work with my therapist, this voice started to get louder and was just like, no, it's again quite gentle. At first, it was like a little peep. And then it was just like, no, that doesn't feel right. And it felt like a little girl, like a little baby growing up. And it was a little girl because I realized that part was so young, right? Apart from the fact that I just only just discovered it, but when it was injured, was super young. And so um, I kind of forgot what the question was, like,
Mm.
therapy and
From
different
brain
modalities,
to body. Yeah.
body. And I realized that yes, the head stuff makes so much sense. But when you're discounting, especially as trauma survivors, when we're discounting so much of our intuition, and as trauma survivors, this is the part of us that never got to develop because it wasn't safe. We weren't taught to feel, well, we were, apart from not being taught to feel, it wasn't safe to feel. Even if someone taught us to, it wasn't safe to do it. We had to dissociate from everything that we were feeling because it was too much to handle. We didn't have the coping tools to soothe ourselves when we felt those feelings. So we just went up into our head.
Mm.
And so even though it made perfect sense, and I'm talking more like in a business sense here, I worked with a business coach for 2 years, and everything was kind of like, she was also NLP trained and very, very strong on the head level and this and that. And parts of my body was just going, no, it does not feel right. Or I do those things, and then a part of me is like activated. And then I'm just like, what do I do with all these feelings? Uh-oh. And so I realized that the part of me that I needed to strengthen was actually not a cognitive, it wasn't in a cognitive modality, it was in a somatic. Somatic is just living in the body. So that's when I started doing, looking more into somatic, like, reading things like, the body keeps a score and all these things about how much our body hangs on to, and actually how much of it informs what we think. Now, I had learned the CBT triangle of thoughts, feelings, and actions. And I was like, okay, so your thoughts create your feelings, right? And then your feelings, how you feel creates your actions. And then I started going, but actually, if I'm really honest with myself, if I'm tracking my patterns, it's actually my feelings, or it was something in my body is creating how I think. And now that's when I started learning about the feeling is just the body's wisdom, right? Everything's somatic. It's neuroception, learning about things that we don't even realize we're not even consciously aware of yet. And then we're consciously aware of it. And then later on, it leads to the stories that we tell ourselves. But there is so much wisdom in the body. And as trauma survivors, it's just been, I haven't even talk about we've been taught to. It's not been safe for us to really take any of that into account. So that's kind of what I realized worked for me. Now, other people maybe who are really big on feelings, maybe they do need a healthy dose of, okay, let's actually take your thoughts and figure out, how they're influencing your behavior, because maybe you're living too much in your body. Obviously, there's an imbalance for some people, right? But for what I found in my personal journey is that I lived so much up in my head. And that was the easy part. What the difficult part was living in my body and listening to my intuition and my feelings, and that there is trusting that there is so much wisdom there. Mm-hmm. And I think another part was also when I started doing parts work. So it wasn't IFS, International Family Systems, Internal Family Systems. Um, and realizing that the parts of me that were coming up, rather than just I'm one big jumbled mess, that there's hundreds of different parts inside, and that no parts are bad. They were all designed. They all came into existence because of what happened to us in our life. And so what I found, and kind of what I talk about, the difference between trauma informed and not trauma informed, is that often when we're not trauma informed, we go into it with, these are limiting beliefs. these are old patterns, these are, whatever. And it's all kind of on a cognitive level. And in a way, we discount them. We're like, that part is that part helpful? No, it's not. Reframe it. Tell it that it's not actually true. Say the complete opposite, right? Just tell ourselves that actually that's not true. And that works for a while, but that part is still there in our body. And when we don't look at it, it just becomes louder, right? Either it feels shamed or it becomes louder. And so I'm like, when I started learning more somatic based and parts based work and doing more of those modalities, I realized like all of these parts are beautiful and all of them were born for a reason. And to talk to those parts and to comfort those parts, and then they get quieter on their own
Mm.
rather than totally discounting it. It's bad because then a part of you splits. Part of you are these parts of you are bad, these parts of you are good. We only want the good.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this repeat of messaging we got as a child of if you're bad, if you're angry or whatever, go to your room. I'm going to shame you. If you're good, you can come out and play with us, right? And it was just more of a repeat of kind of the messaging we got in childhood. So I found that parts work and somatic work was just really helpful in instead of splitting, it kind of helped me become more whole and more accepting of all parts of myself, which is when we're talking about shame based kind of modalities or focusing on shame, it's really what I needed because the other parts still felt it was helpful, but still had a lot of shame associated with it. So yeah,
There's
that's kind of what I realized.
somatic therapy and then also the parts work. I really resonate with the somatic therapy. There was quite a bit of that integrated into the Allender certification that I did. So much of it, as we're telling our stories, because you start to have the emotions of that you experienced when the story was taking place, whether you were 4 or 5 or whatever time in your childhood. But that is possibly the first time that you're actually recognizing what you're feeling, able to put words to it, and then able to completely feel it and process it in the moment. So emotions, like some of these words, some of us are like, we don't even have a chance to say them, to speak them, to even know how to use them in our everyday life. But when you're talking about shame, guilt, contempt, um, all these things. And then, well, how does that feel sensationally in your body? Oh, I'm feeling this horrible knot in my stomach. I'm feeling tight in my throat. I can feel my legs feel like lead. I'm feeling my hands clench up. Being able to verbalize that and now have a safe space and place where you can do it with people who are there to hold your experience and help you make sense of it, help you understand what really happened. It's so, I mean, I don't even know what words to put to it. You shouldn't have words because again, it's supposed to be somatic, it's supposed to be able to feel it. So so much of that was incredibly, incredibly healing and frightening at the same time because it is really the first time your automatic reaction is just shut off. And many times we'll shut down and start to disassociate and go into hypoarousal. And then it's being able to
Yeah.
regulate, right? So understanding all these things, I think for both of us, a psychoeducational part has been really helpful to just give vocabulary and
Yes.
terminology and concepts to these things, which, okay, maybe a lot of us don't know about these things or we're learning about it, but for us, because it's so pertinent and relevant to our lived experience, we need to be able to have a framework to understand what happened to us because then it means that these things really happened to us. Up until that point, it's just kind of like, did it? Maybe not, perhaps. But when you're telling your story and someone's saying, this is the truth and this is why, and it's like, whoa, I'm validated. What happened to me is not just some figment of my imagination. It really, truly happened. That is so liberating. It's so healing. Yeah, so that somatic experience and being able to fully have it, fully live it. Yeah, so that was one part for me. For me, the two modalities or the areas that I was able to receive a lot of therapy in. The two were the narrative therapy. So working with our stories from childhood between the ages of 4 to 18, working with our stories, understanding meanings, patterns, themes, And then also, like, what was the bodily experience that we had, and having people engage your stories and work with them to help you uncover truths. Because so many times in childhood, things happen to us if they're overwhelming and we don't have the resource to deal with them. We'll then create a story and a narrative. And if that narrative isn't true, we're still living that same outdated, false narrative in the here and now and wondering, why does these patterns seem to be repeating themselves? Why can't I just get over it? But you can't, as long as you still continue to live out those stories from your childhood. So you have to go back to that moment. How did that story come to be in the first place? What happened that made that belief basically a survival thing? Either I create this belief about myself, my situation, my parents, my family, otherwise, I could die. That's how that's how real it was and threatening for us it was as children. So we have to at some point be able to go back and explore those stories. So narrative therapy. The other thing is attachment theory. Attachment theory has been huge for me in understanding what is my attachment style. Do I have a secure attachment or is it insecure? Of course, it was insecure. Well, how did I develop this insecure attachment, and why? What were the stories that formed my need to attach in a certain way? Why did I attach a certain way? So I would say a narrative therapy and then attachment theory at the same time, and kind of like an integration of both of those models through Allender theory really helped me to it gave me a really solid rock foundation for starting, I would say, starting my therapy journey and my trauma recovery journey. And it's continued on, and I don't think it's ever going to end. It's going to continue on probably until, I leave this planet. But it's given me that foundation that I need. And it's kind of like what you said, that spiral. So everything that happens, I can still take it and look at it through those lens, and it helps me understand then through other things like, different modalities or different types of therapy. And now I'm studying to be a person-centered, kind of at the core of our practice is person-centered therapy. So being able to provide to our clients unconditional positive regard, that's acceptance, congruency, being genuine, being authentic, and then empathy, which is just understanding. Um, Being able to, first of all, take those things, take those core conditions and apply it to myself. Do I fully accept myself? Do I have integrity? Do I say what I'm going to do and do what I'm going to say? Do I have that congruence within myself? Am I able to offer myself understanding for the different things that I go through in everyday life? Yeah, so kind of my journey in becoming a counselor, so much of that again still goes back to not, what are you going to do vocationally or career-wise in your life, but are you able to take these principles and theories and apply them where it first belongs, which is at home within myself? Because they say that you can never take someone further than you've gone yourself. So if I can only be a good counselor and be able to offer that to others if I've been able to give that to myself first. Yeah. So I think that's the things that have kind of worked for me, helped me. Things that haven't, I think we probably have to cover that next time because we're coming to the end. But drum roll, drum, we do have a special project and initiative that we're working on. Okay, I'm going to let you introduce it first, Vix, and then I'll kind of fill in. So, what is the funny term, but it's called Plitic Initiative? What does that stand for?
Peer-led, integrative, therapeutical trauma care initiative. Did I get it right? So many big words.
It's really long. It's a mouthful. And if anyone has any suggestions for how we can take it down, great. We're on board with having a discussion about that. But for short, Plitic Initiative. Yeah. So this is our new baby. Yeah.
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 So we're going to basically be taking both of the areas that we have been studying in and combining it together to make this trauma care course and I think our target audience is survivors of like cult survivors, but also that doesn't just include cult survivors. It's also anybody who's been in a like high control relationship. Um, and what were some of the other categories that we were
Yeah,
going to
so
be?
kind of like an umbrella of relational trauma. So any trauma that we experience while in relationship with others, whatever that relationship looks like you were saying, it could be a high control group, could be even a dysfunctional family, it could be an abusive relationship, as well as, yes, trauma survivors from cults like ourselves. So yeah, we've created this program to basically be a solution to some of the challenges and problems that Vicky and I went through on our own trauma recovery and healing journey. So we're kind of taking our experience, we're taking what we've learned, and we're also taking, I would really say, the heart in what we do, in what we've done on our own journey, and bringing that to a place where other people can benefit from community. Because many times going on a healing journey, it can be quite isolating, quite lonely. Many times you don't know if you're doing it right, if you're doing it wrong, if you're on the right path. And it can feel like sometimes, yeah, you're in it alone. And we both know what that feels like. At the same time, we've also been incredibly blessed because we've had each other through this, and even having one other person who's there, like to say, I know what that feels like. I know what you're going through. You know, I'm thinking of you. Try this. Maybe it won't work. I've also come across this. And even just to be there and being like, I'm here for you. Reach out anytime you need. I'm going to just nod along. I'm going to be like, yeah, you got this. I know it's hard. The power and the value in that, again, you can't really put words to it. So some of the things that Vicky and I have benefited from on our own journey, some of the things that we've learned, including our experience, we're bringing to create this program that we'd like to offer to others, to support them and to basically have a framework to go through while you're on your own healing journey. So for this Politic initiative, we will be putting out more information. We'll be explaining a little bit more about it. So if you have any questions or you're interested in it, please reach out to me or Vicky. We're both on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. We're there on YouTube with this podcast, Sondervous Podcast. And yeah, we will be sharing more information, and we hope to launch it in April this year. And it will go from April to October. This will be our first cohort, cohort 2025. And yeah, we're really excited about it. And yeah, looking forward to just sharing with others what we've learned, and yeah, a bit from our own journey. Yeah. So yeah, I think we'll probably wrap it up there for today. Yeah, it's been great to share these different stories with you. Thank you for being a part of this space. Any final thoughts, Vix?
Just that, um, yeah, there's one last thing about, I think, like trauma survivors and especially people who have maybe read a lot or done a lot of courses and things. We always think that, okay, well, like either I've done enough or, well, I've done so much already. So how is this gonna help me? Right. And I just kind of want to encourage people that sometimes it's just taking that one more step. Where are we talking about like this sometimes the timing, right? Sometimes it's not about the modality or the program. Sometimes it wasn't the right time. And so, maybe 2025 is the right time for if you've been kind of trying to white knuckle it or do it by yourself or, all the things that trauma survivors do, that there is help out there. There are people who have been through something similar, and maybe this is the right place for you. And if so, yeah, reach out, let us know, just say hi, and yeah, ask us more about the program, and we'll see if it's a good fit for you and your situation where you're at.
Yeah, yes. We'd love to welcome as many participants as we can to our strange name, our Politic initiative community. Yeah. Okay. Bye, guys. We'll see you next time. And Happy New Year. Happy 2025. All right. Bye.
Bye.